Okay, the average American guy lives till 74.
Hmm.
I've only got 10 years left.
If you look at it that way.
Could you imagine in your
No,
situation if you had 10 years left?
Yeah, I'd be thinking.
You'd be thinking.
I'd be thinking of the clock.
Yeah, you'd be thinking, what am I leaving behind?
But, yeah. Mr. Ian Davis, you are a husband, a father, a grandfather, a retired business executive, current owner of Intrepid Firearms Academy, an outdoor enthusiast, and a man of very strong faith. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, but you made me sound really old with all that list. that hurt, man.
Well,
it is what it is. I know.
Full of wisdom. Thank you for being part of the show. We just had a conversation. The conversation's continuing.
Yeah.
Just got to know you recently, and I can tell that I think I told you last week, you've lived a very full life.
Yes.
And blessed life.
Yep.
And that's the purpose of me having you on this show, because
cool.
I want to draw from your experiences, everything you've learned from in the past, and I want to encourage other young fathers, husbands, in their walk with the Lord and their walk in life.
Right.
So let's get started. Where are you originally from?
I was born technically in Toronto, Ontario, and that's the only reason I say technically. I lived in a different one of the 5 boroughs that at the time made up metropolitan Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
But I was born in Toronto General Hospital, which is located in Toronto. So my birth certificate says Toronto. Or City of Toronto, mm-hmm. And I lived in one of the 5 boroughs. I was the son of a traditional, old school Canadian couple. And if you think about the culture of it, the closest ethnic group, I don't even know if ethnic is the right word. Mm-hmm. The closest ethnic group to a traditional Canadian couple during the 1950s and 60s would be an English couple. So, stiff upper lip and power through your difficulties and self-reliance.
Yeah,
it's like an American stereotypical persona, mm-hmm. but without the bravado. It's much more reserved. Mm-hmm. Lots of character. Character is very important. Yeah. Values are very important. So that's kind of the culture I grew up in. My dad, I'm proud to say, was a World War II flight instructor for the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Nice.
And so he taught other pilots from all sorts of different nations how to fly before sending them off to the European theater, the African theater, mm-hmm. Even some Indian stuff and Australian stuff. Mm-hmm. A lot of Australian pilots he taught. So, and then my mom was a very traditional stay-at-home mom, and a wonderful woman, a saint. And we had 4 kids. They had 4 kids. I was not involved in that process at all. I know that because I was the 4th.
Oh, okay. So you're the youngest?
Yeah, I was the youngest by a lot, actually. My sister, gosh, she's got to be in her upper 70s now.
Okay.
So I was born in 1961, April 7, 1961. And
happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been not that long ago. Mm-hmm. So I'm 64 years old. It's funny, I was talking to somebody recently. I'm actually really feeling the weight of my years. I'm thinking to myself, okay, the average American guy lives till 74. I've only got 10 years left.
If you look at it that way.
Could you imagine in your situation if you had 10 years left?
Yeah, I'd be thinking.
You'd be thinking.
I'd be thinking of the clock.
Yeah, you'd be thinking, what am I leaving behind?
Yeah.
Am I leaving good stuff behind? And you lament some of the bad choices you made. And there's all kinds of emotional baggage that goes into think at this stage, thinking about where you are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I pray you have more than 10.
Yeah, me too. And I got to tell you, medically on the inside, I'm as healthy as a horse.
Okay.
I have the maturity of a horse too, but that's different.
Well, that's good. So born in 61.
Yep.
You're 64.
Correct.
what was life growing up in your family? You were the youngest. Your sister's much older.
Mm-hmm. 2 brothers, 1 deceased.
Okay.
Life growing up in my family was very interesting, tumultuous. So my sister was the eldest, and she was a bona fide textbook hippie.
Mm-hmm.
She, she was a flower child to the nth degree. She was happy. She loved her music. I don't think she did a whole lot of drugs, but she did some. She had a blue fold back VW van.
Okay.
Before they were Vanagons,
Okay.
or whatever they called, and the sides folded down on the turned it into a pickup truck, and she called it Blueberry, and then she got a red one and called it Strawberry or Raspberry. It was just, she's a classic hippie.
Interesting.
And she was kind of my pseudo mom. She taught me to sing, taught me to play the organ. She taught me, I don't know that she taught me to read so much as she gave me a love of reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how that worked, whether she read to me a lot or she encouraged me to read, but I attribute a lot of the artistic component of who I am to her. She was kind of like my second mom,
Mm-hmm.
for which I'm very grateful. My older brother, still alive, he got caught up in a good bit of the countercultural revolution of the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Got into some drugs, but he was a pretty rebellious kid. And that, combined with my dad, who was a flight officer for the Royal Canadian Air Force,
right.
and wrapped up pretty tight, very focused on how you should be. You look to the current culture, and it's very permissive. Let kids grow up however they're going to be.
Yeah.
Well, these were totally different times,
mm-hmm.
and it was here are the boundaries that a proper young boy should have
mm-hmm.
to behave. Speak when spoken to. This is how you hold your knife and your fork at the dinner table. This is how you understand what a proper place setting looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And here's how you dress. Here's a Windsor knot. You ought to know how to tie a Windsor knot before you're about 3.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
So very structured, which by itself is not bad. How you implement the structure, I think, is what sometimes was lost in those days.
Yeah.
In terms of there being a loving way to introduce that structure to young boys.
Mm-hmm.
We can still raise proper young boys,
mm-hmm.
and they can be wild men in the woods,
right? And
they can be perfect gentlemen in daily life.
I agree.
There's no reason we can't do that. So anyway, maybe we can talk more about boys and those sorts of things. But and then so he was, and he lived a long and difficult. He's still alive, as I said, but he lived a long and difficult life. And he still, consumes his fair share of drugs. He's in his mid 70s, high 70s. He just struggles. He struggled with mental health issues too for much of his life.
Does that do the military?
No, the dad was the military. The son had no military. My eldest brother got thrown out of military school. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing it had something to do with drugs at an earlier age. Maybe a rebellious spirit to start with. Not good fathering in terms of understanding how to manage that rebellious spirit. It was a strong man against a strong son, and smash. And so, he left home at a relatively young age, didn't go to college. My father was a successful businessman. He had the means to put all of us through whatever school we chose, and they didn't take advantage of it. This is back when a college degree really meant something. So he had, the mental health stuff. I'm going to chalk it up to consumption of drugs a fair bit. There was a lot of drugs, but I think probably a good part of the mental health challenges were drug related. And then my next oldest brother, was he was the kind soul in the family, and parents are never supposed to have favorites, but he was my mom's favorite. He was, I think, a little mentally slower, not as quick on the ball as the other three of us. He was kinder, and my mom warmed up to him, I think, as a mother's would naturally do. He had also some mental health challenges early, whether they were drug related or not, I don't know. Whether they were, I'll call them genetic. There's lots of people on podcasts and stuff these days saying there's no such thing as genetic mental health. It's all biochemical and things like that. But I don't know.
Interesting.
So, but he actually was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia at about age, I don't know, 17, 18, something like that. Got institutionalized in I think it's called the Toronto Psychiatric Institute or something like that, for a short time. But he lived a troubled life for most of the rest of his life, and he died alone in a single wide construction trailer that he lived out of in a remote town in British Columbia in his 50s, and his aorta of his heart just ruptured, just blew up. So that was very sad.
What's the age gap between you and him then?
I should know this like off the top of my head, and I don't, but I'm going to say it's like 8 to 9 years.
And so
he was almost gone from the house when I still have recollection.
Right. Okay. That's what I was wondering. Like growing up in the house, what it was like growing up with, if he developed schizophrenia and had mental health issues and stuff.
What was that like?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting question.
Growing up
So
in a house
I don't really. I was not attuned to the world clearly enough. I was a little boy of like, I don't know, 8. Like he left home when he was like 16.
Yeah.
Young.
Okay.
So if I'm right in my 8 to 9 year old, I'm 7 to 8 years old.
Okay.
Two things. One is I think we have a tendency not to remember traumatic events when we're young,
right,
for self-protection reasons.
Yeah.
And then the other is that's just at 7 or 8 years old, you don't have the cognitive capacity to be able to look at an event that you're watching and really understand it as we would now as men.
Right.
So I do have one recollection that is an interesting one that I think has influenced me in ways that I don't remember, or I don't understand, not don't remember. I have a recollection of a yelling match between my father and that brother, that nearest brother. And there was so much conflict in the house, and my dad wanted it a certain way, and there was no other way that it was going to be than that. It was his house. And he, he didn't beat the kids, but he kind of didn't need to. He was just, this is the way it's going to be, and there's just no options. And so my nearest brother, Jeff, said, then I'm leaving. I'm out of here. He was only 16. He hadn't even finished high school yet. He said, I'm out of here. And in those days, maybe now, I'm so old, I don't even know now, but in those days, you could just go someplace and shack up with your buddies for as long as you needed to, because there was always a house, there was always lots of weed, and you could just hang out with somebody for as long as you wanted to hang out with.
Wow.
I think that culture still exists today, but anyway, so he left. But the conversation that got stuck way back in the deep recesses of my mind was a yelling match between those two, my dad and Jeff, and the outcome, the words that get stuck in my head are, I swear, if he turns out like you, I'll never forgive you.
Who said that?
My dad.
Your dad said that to your
brother? To my brother, in reference to me.
Yeah.
If Ian turns out like you, I'll never forgive you.
Yikes.
So yikes is right. And so, and it speaks to the power of words. Between anybody, between a husband and a wife when the kids are around, between dad and son, even when the wife's around.
Yeah.
But words are powerful things, and so I've often thought that left me with a what's the word? A scar,
Mm-hmm. Impression.
an impression that says I have to live up to all sorts of stuff.
Right.
Like I don't even know. I could go to a shrink and they could slice me 6 ways to Sundays and come up with some version of what did that mean. But I can imagine it means a lot of things. I could imagine it means
don't turn out like him.
Don't turn out like him, or you have to live up to your dad's expectation of things, or your dad's expectation of things is by definition right. Therefore, you better live up to it.
Right.
Or your worth as a human being is measured from this point forward as to whether or not you measure up. I certainly have perfectionist tendencies, and they may well have been born in that moment. I suspect it's a lot more subtle than that they were born over, from age 2 to age 10, not just in that one conflict. But I remember it, and it was
interesting.
It's come back to me on many occasions. So as we're talking here, and your audience is whoever watches, of course, but in your heart, your audience is men who, as a result of watching this podcast, can make choices that are better choices than the ones they might have made had they not watched this podcast. Man, I would say to all of you guys, just be careful what you say. Yes, say the truth. But there's a reason that the scriptures tell us to speak the truth in love. And my dad was not speaking. He was speaking the truth. He did not want me to turn out like Jeff. Yeah. That was the truth. But it wasn't in love.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you grew up, were you into sports? Were you into,
I was very active. I was
outdoors?
A kid. I'm sorry?
Outdoors?
Everything.
Yeah.
I was a very bright kid. I was very unchallenged by the system. That turned me into hell on wheels. And it didn't need to be wheels. I could be hell on anything.
Okay.
So I was a problem kid. I literally created so much difficulty for the world around me to try to get attention. Yeah. To try to get somebody to meet me where I was in terms of my energy level, my intellectual ability, my curiosity, my capability of moving faster than the system was designed for. That I won't go into all the pranks that I did, but there were some pretty brutal ones. But by the time I was in 6th grade, the principal of the school, it was either going to be I was going to sit on the bench outside his office all day, every day, or he had to get rid of me, and he decided to get rid of me. Jeez. So he put me in the textbook closet, the closet where all the textbooks were for the whole school were kept. And it's kind of amusing, actually, to think about it in retrospect. But I would arrive. I would walk to school every morning. This was back in the days when everybody walked to school. Okay. I would walk to school. He would put me in the closet. He would close the door. I would start reading every textbook like 10 times. That's crazy. And he let me out at lunchtime. I would walk home for lunch. I would watch the Flintstones. I would come back. I would come back, and he would put me back in the room. This was the last 6 weeks of school, which is like a long time.
It's 6th grade, though.
Yeah.
Did your mom and dad know about that?
Yeah.
And they supported it?
I guess. He wouldn't have done that. Do I know that for sure that they knew that? Huh. I probably do, because here's what also happened is they hooked me up with a child psychologist at the time. And they were trying to figure out, why is this guy such a train wreck? Yeah. He's bright, he's charming, he's everybody loves him, except when he's going nuts. Yeah. And so the takeaway that eventually filtered down to me was that I needed more structure. And I think the other part is I needed more challenge. Maybe that was part of the structure that they were. So at that point, they moved me from public school into a boys' private academy
Okay.
that was modeled after the English public school tradition. Green vest, green blazer, white shirt, green and white striped tie, gray flannel slacks, properly shined shoes, black socks. I don't think they actually specified that we had to have tidy whities, but maybe they did. I don't
expected.
know. Back then they told us everything. So anyway, very structured school, and it worked. I got smacked around. Only a couple of times did I physically get smacked around, but they were great wake-up calls. But I got trusted. I got pushed. I pushed in the sense of intellectually challenged, physically challenged. I started to develop my first love of soccer because it was an English-style school. And the head soccer coach was the goalkeeper of the professional Toronto MLS team.
Nice.
And he did this on the side because he loved kids, and so I developed a love of soccer. My best buddy at school was an English guy, son of an English British. I think he was a constable, Bobby, over in England before they came to Canada, and so they were hardcore footballers. And so I learned how to play from him and this kid. He was the star kid in the whole school. So I got some good skills out of him. It was great learning. And eventually that took me to a college soccer career. And I'm actually still a nationally licensed goalkeeper coach.
No way.
Yep.
Interesting.
So,
you just have, you surprised
interesting
me.
background. Last competitive game I played was on behalf of Canada. I was the goalkeeper for Canada against the U.S. Canada won. Go team, go. I remember a guy had a breakaway on me, and so I came out to the 18-yard box, and I met him. Like, there's nothing I could do except just
go meet him.
And he blasted one. And apparently, I guess I had cut off the angle just right. The ball landed square in my chest, and it must have gone like 30 yards some other direction. All I remember is feeling like I'd been hit by the lightning bolt of God himself. But no goal.
And you guys ended up winning the game.
We ended up winning the game.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, my team were happy about that save, I can tell you.
I bet they were.
So anyway.
So preparatory school, which I don't know if you call it a preparatory academy.
Yeah.
And
so that was for 2 years.
Oh, okay. You didn't graduate from there then?
No, because my dad, round about the end of my eighth grade year, turned 61. And 60, and he decided he was going to retire at 60. He had a successful career, but the career didn't define him. He wanted to become a snowbird, move to Florida, do that whole thing. So we packed up and we moved to Fort Lauderdale. Actually, technically Pompano Beach, but and that was in 1975, I think. 1970, late 74.
So you were 13?
I was 13, just going into grade 9. And my so I went to school at a school called Pinecrest Preparatory School, Pinecrest Prep School. Very, very good school. That was actually the school that right at the end of Donald Trump's first term, when he was trying to find a school for Barron, that was his top choice.
Really?
Yeah. He didn't end up going there. I don't know why. If I were to guess, it would be because probably Pinecrest said, the security concerns are so significant. We're just going to need to pass, Mr. President. Thank you, but no thank you. That would be my guess. But I don't know.
Interesting.
So I got a great education there, 9th through 11th grade. Significant event occurred in the midst of that. I also went to Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church down there, which you're probably too young to know that, but there is a preacher in American Christian history named Dr. D. James Kennedy. And he is one of the seminal preachers of the 20th century. He's up there, not quite in Billy Graham country, but a notch below Billy Graham. Billy Graham is famous for his evangelism. So's Dr. Kennedy. Anyway, strong Presbyterian I would say, reformed in his theology.
Okay.
Well, no question, he's reformed in his theology.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I first started to go to church.
Okay.
And that's where my dad went to church, actually, for the couple of years prior to us moving down to Florida. I need to rewind the script here. Give me a second. So the tension between me and my dad. I was a strong-willed kid, obviously. I mean, you can tell. And my dad fundamentally hadn't changed a whole lot. Somewhere in the mix, I guess it was it was a family counselor but somebody said that recommended that my dad and I disconnect in some way, not permanently, but just
separate,
but so that we wouldn't come to blows. I mean, I was growing into an independent young man. I was going to conquer the world, and he was going to tell me how I was going to conquer the world. Right. And the hell if I was going to let him tell me how to conquer the world. Yeah. So somebody suggested you guys need to take some. I think they suggested it to him, and to his credit, he said, "My son's future well-being and the well-being of my family in terms of an emotionally stable place for my bride is more important than me getting my way." So, thank you to my dad for that. And so he moved to Florida in anticipation of going there permanently. He moved to Florida for the last 2 years of my high school. Okay. Not 2 years of my high school.
Of your where you were at the prep school.
I'm getting my timeline mixed up. Let me figure this one out. No. What I'm just telling you comes after we came back from Florida. Let me rewind my rewind. Okay. So we went down to Florida for grades 9, 10, and 11. I got introduced to the gospel there by one of the great preachers of the 20th century, Dr. D. James Kennedy at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church. That's where my dad also was saved at age 61. Okay. So it's not too late for anybody. Yeah. And it's interesting. It softened him. He became a very different guy.
Amazing how that happens.
It is amazing how that happens. And it wasn't overnight, and it wasn't some, lightning bolt, but it softened him. And he became much gentler with my mom. Didn't become a lot gentler with me, but his orientation toward my mother changed dramatically. Okay. And I saw it even at that age. Yeah. So I came back
to Canada?
To Canada when my dad turned 65, because at 65 you can get taxpayer funded. Most people who don't understand economics would say free, but it's not free. Yeah. Prescription drugs. Okay. But the requirement was, in addition to your state-funded healthcare. Right. But the condition was you had to live in Ontario for half the year. Okay. So in order to meet that requirement, my dad decided we're going to keep our Florida place. We're going to come back to Ontario. Well, I still, at that point, had 1 year left to go in high school, or in Ontario high school, where they went to grade 13. I had 2 years left. So I went back into grade 12 and 13 in Ontario high school then. And my dad and I were just, and this is where I'm correcting my bad timeline from a minute ago. So my dad was sensitive enough, and he wanted me to succeed well enough, and the peace of my mother's household to be stable enough, that he said, I'm going to go back to Florida, and I'm going to let you finish out your last 2 years of high school without the conflict that you and I seem to create all the time. So, I mean, I suppose I could interpret that as he just wanted to go play golf. Yeah. I'm not interpreting it that way. I'm interpreting it that he realized his shortcomings. He realized his inability to manage his and my relationship, and he said, I'm going to give my kid his space so that he can grow up and finish high school and go on to college, and then he'll be free. So I think that there was some wisdom in that. Yeah. Difficult decision for a dad,
Yeah. Very hard.
I mean, freaking you. I don't know if you could imagine.
No, I can't imagine.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that much conflict. But,
yeah. And then your mom, and you stayed with your mom in Canada.
Right.
And finished out your schooling. And,
finished out my high school. And I went
well?
Then I went, what's that?
Everything went well, went smooth, graduated.
Yeah, I was, I started to be a dope smoker in my high school years in Florida, not surprising in the mid-1970s in Florida. Mm-hmm. And I started to enjoy that. That carried over into Canada. It carried over for a number of years, actually. And so there's a little side story for your audience. I was getting ready to. You choose in the Canadian system. You choose your top 3 universities you want to go to, and you apply to them. Okay. And they evaluate everything, and they tell you whether or not you got in. Just not unlike here, but I think you only get 3. Okay. You only get to choose 3. Okay. Well, my number 1 was a school called Queen's University, and I was applying to their business program, and that was kind of like Canada's Harvard Business School. Okay. The creme de la creme. Well, my dad went to school, and he graduated. Actually, he didn't graduate. That's another story altogether. But he finished in 1936, a long time ago. So much of the baby I am in the family. Okay. And they looked at my results, and I didn't get in. And I said, and I called them. I was 18 at this point. Mm-hmm. I called them at the admissions office, and I said, and my dad was not part of this. My mom was not part of this. And I said, why didn't I get in? Well, you didn't pass the cutoff. And in those days, it was pretty clear it was a cutoff. Okay. Did you get the marks? No chance of getting in. You didn't write essays, and it didn't matter whether you were a Boy Scout or you walked old ladies across the street. None of that stuff mattered. Were you smart enough? Yeah. And I said, read me my grades. And please, I said, please. Yeah. But I'm a Canadian after all. Yeah. I'll say sorry for all the things you did wrong.
Definitely a Canadian thing.
That's right. And they read me my grades off, and I said, well, wait a minute. Go back to functions and relations, which is like like an advanced algebra. Mm-hmm. And they had me at like a D. A D was my grade. We have a slightly different grading system in Canada. I said, well, I took a makeup course over the summer, and that because I knew that wasn't going to be a good enough grade to make it happen. They said, well, we don't have that on record. I'm sorry. I said, would you be willing to put that, since I took the course and I went to the other, would you be willing to reconsider the decision in light of that? And they said, well, we're not sure. We'll have to get to the registrar and the admissions people. And they came back and they said, yes, you're in.
Wow. Just like that. Yeah. Got accepted.
What's that?
Just like that, got accepted.
Just got accepted.
Asking a question.
Well, that's kind of my message to your folks, your audience is to say, don't accept the way things they are, the way things don't accept things the way they seem to be. Yeah. Without being willing to push a little. Mm-hmm.
I think we all found that out during COVID a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great example. Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, nobody at Queen's was doing anything manipulative like in COVID. Yeah. But nonetheless, had I not asked that one question, would you please read me my grades? Yeah. My life would have taken a different trajectory. Mm-hmm. So, just don't give up. Mm-hmm. It's your life. Don't let somebody else dictate how it's going to get lived. Mm-hmm. And fight for what you think is important. And at that point, I thought getting into Queen's was really important. My dad went there. My aunt went there. They were both prominent members of the student body. My dad was the chief judge of the student court. Okay. He was the head of the student union. And my aunt was the leader of the female residence. There was a huge building that she ran that on behalf of the students. And I was very proud to go there. And so I did my undergraduate education in business with a focus in accounting and human resources. Okay. I did my graduate work with a focus in employment and labor law. collective bargaining, those sorts of things, kind of a narrower focus within the human resources profession.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of launched me on my career as a guy in the human resources world. Principally, that I started out in the labor and employee relations, negotiating contracts
in Canada or in the U.S.
In Canada, mostly in the early part.
Yeah.
My first assignment was right in Kingston, Ontario, where Queens is, and then I got moved by that company to Thunder Bay, of all places, which is on the north shore of Lake Superior.
Okay.
So if you don't plug your car in the wintertime with a block heater, your engine will be solid ice by...
Really? Jeez.
Oh, yeah.
That cold.
It's that cold in the wintertime.
Wow.
So, and that was Thunder Bay. And I made rail cars, light rail cars. So the kinds of things that you would see in airports, shuttling people to across terminals. Those kind of small light rail vehicles.
You made those?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't. I was the. But that was the company.
Yeah.
It's called Urban Transportation Development Corporation.
Okay.
And they got bought out by a Quebec company called Lavalin in 1987 or 6. And that was the year I got married. Which is right when I was saved. So we'll put a bookmark.
That's what I was going to go back to.
Yeah, that's right when I was saved. So we'll put a bookmark there. And then so they Lavalin laid off a third of the whole management team, included me, because I was a young buck. I was not very long in the job. And so they laid us off, and I was looking for work, and that launched me into the automotive industry. So
interesting.
Put a pause on there. We can go back if you want to.
Yeah. So how old were you then when you got? Because I thought you said Dr. Kennedy had a big impact on you in Florida.
Yeah. Good listening.
And if you were saved when you were in high school, but then maybe it sounds
I wasn't
like
saved. I wasn't. Okay. I was listening. Okay. I was listening.
Listening, feeling it out, and then you actually kind of really committed.
So
in your early 20s?
25. As a matter of fact, December 29, 1985.
Nice.
So my kind of spiritual journey was one of, I was raised in this very structured, almost British, but it was Canadian, but we had a very British flavor to our version of Canadianism. Okay. And we belonged to the United Church of Canada. Maybe it's called the United Church of Christ down here. I'm not sure. Okay. But it was, I would describe it as quite a liberal church. Okay. Not liberal in the kooky liberal sense of we had guys wearing dresses. It was when they went to
drag
church.
Shows.
Yeah. But simply that it was a social club masquerading as a church. Interesting. It was the place to be. Yeah. Good people were there, which is true. Mm-hmm. Responsible people, people that had a good, solid job, that raised good families. All those nice, proper things about a healthy society were there at the church. Mm-hmm. But at least from my young eyes, and based on the testimony of my parents, the central focus of that church was not the relationship between me and my Lord. And examining what that looks like and dealing with that. Mm-hmm. You didn't talk a whole bunch about sin. You certainly didn't talk about a personal relationship with Jesus.
But your parents knew to get you to church, to take you to church.
Probably knew to get themselves. They probably
themselves.
They've been raised in churches for years, and it's just what you're supposed to do. Right. It's a good place to be, which I can't disagree with. Mm-hmm. But if it ends there, it's catastrophic, right? Because you missed the boat. Yeah. So anyway, so when I got to be a very curious, sort of intellectually minded teenager, and I got all this insanity out of my system when they smacked me around at boys' school. And actually, they didn't get the insanity. It's still in me. Yeah. It's still in me.
Alive and well.
Alive and well. But when I started to become a thinker, in addition to becoming a doer of life, I was a thinker. Right. I started to ask all kinds of very metaphysical questions about life. You know, the big questions that most people, I don't know, maybe that's wrong to say, but I thought most people ask, like, why are we here? What's the point? Okay, they talk about heaven and hell, but what is heaven? What is hell? And all of those sort of metaphysical, big picture questions. And then I was start to be introduced to science, and they talk about this evolution thing, and then this evolution thing doesn't agree with the whole Dr. Kennedy stuff, and who's right? And I got to ask all these questions, and I need all these answers. So I asked those questions for about 8 years after I was first introduced. I think this is the right timeline. Is it 8 years? That's about right. Yeah. About 8 years.
Sounds about right. 25.
And during those 8 years, my sister, that old hippie broad, was praying for me every single day because she'd come to know Jesus at, I don't know, maybe age 30. I'm ballparking.
Interesting. Which was in the 70s, late 60s, 70s.
Yeah. Well, her 30 for her might have been 75 to 80.
Yeah.
And so she is praying for me every single day.
Wow.
You know, her little baby brother, who she kind of thinks as almost her son.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think she thought of me, but I was her baby brother.
Yeah.
And so she's praying for me every day. So eventually, I make my way back to Canada. Just told you that timeline.
Yep.
I go to Queen's University.
Yep.
I'm now in between my undergraduate and graduate work, and I met my my first wife, and we were dating, and we were madly in love, and we were not engaged, but you know, anybody that looked at us saw the writing was on the wall.
Right.
And I went to my sister's church with Charlotte, who was my first wife. And we went to my sister's church, which was coincidentally only 30 minutes north of my university. And there was we finished listening to the sermon, finished the church service, and we went back to my sister's house. And it was a very simple farmhouse, and we sat around the kitchen table, which was a picnic table inside her house that she used as a kitchen table.
Okay.
And it was my then girlfriend, Charlotte, was there. And the preacher came over for coffee and biscuits or whatever. And my sister and my sister's husband, Walter. My sister's Beth. So the preacher's sitting across, and he's looking at Charlotte and I, all, you know, gooey-eyed at each other.
Yeah.
And he lays it on her. And he looks at her in the eye, and he says, "You can't marry this man." And she's taken aback. And as if to say, "What do you mean I can't marry this man?" First of all, she probably thought, "Who are you?" But she was a very meek woman. And he says, Scripture makes it very clear, you cannot be unequally yoked. And you're a believer, Charlotte, and he's not.
Interesting. And you're right there, sitting. I'm
right there. He's pulling no punches, man. He is pulling no punches. This guy was a straight shooter.
Yeah.
But then that was the easy news. And she's in tears at this point because she respects the clergy,
right? And
she respects this guy and his understanding of Scripture, and she loves the Lord. So now she's caught in a very difficult spot.
Yeah.
Holy cow! This dude said I can't have the love of my life.
Yeah.
So then he turns to me, and he says, "As for you, you've been asking these questions of your sister, of me, of the Lord for the last 8 years." And he said, "It's time for you to shit or get off the pot."
Wow.
And I was just totally freaked out.
Taken back.
Taken back.
Yeah.
And then he said, I want you to imagine something. There was a stairwell you could see. It was a very small house. There was a stairwell you could see going up to the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I want you to imagine yourself at the top of that stairway. And I want you to imagine this whole house burning down. And the entire stairwell is burnt out. There's nowhere for you to go. And there's a guy at the bottom of the stairs with his arms outstretched that says, Ian, jump. I got you, man. Jump. And he said, who do you suppose that guy is? I said, I'm guessing that's Jesus. He's right.
Yeah.
And then he said, I don't know how to say this any clearer. You have got to shit or get off the pot, buddy.
Yeah.
Let's go. Now, I did not make a profession of faith at that moment.
Okay.
It was only weeks after that that I was in a small little Baptist church in a...
Even after that moment, you still didn't... You didn't make a decision. You weren't ready.
I don't know whether I wasn't ready.
Or just maybe taken back or surprised.
I can't remember the specific emotion, but I didn't at that point. And it's probably part of my personality. I don't get pushed into anything.
Yeah, you had to think about it.
I had to think about it, and maybe a little bit of bristling says, okay, you got some moxie there, old guy. You told me that in front of my girl. I don't know. I don't know exactly what I was thinking, but...
Right. So a couple weeks go by.
So a few weeks go by, and I'm at a little church in Mactaquac, New Brunswick, middle of nowhere. It's my then girlfriend's family church, and I still had not made a profession of faith. I was still not engaged, and they were preaching Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Actually, they were mispreaching it. They were not, the exegesis was not good, but that's besides the point.
Okay.
Lord can do what he wants with bad preaching. I found myself toward the end of that sermon when the altar call came. By the way, they had an altar call every Sunday since the beginning of time in this Baptist church. Yeah. I was the first guy in the history of the church to stand up.
No way.
And walk up, tears strolling down my face. Sobbing, not really know what I was doing, and I just said, I'm done. I don't know whether it was I can't put up this fight anymore, or I really get it now. I mean, I had gotten it intellectually. I'd gotten it for a long time.
Connected to your heart, though.
Yeah, I don't think it connected to my heart, and I just the walls came down, and I said, oh, I guess this is it, and I'm going forward, and I'm, tears streaming down my face. They didn't know what to do with me. It's the first time this had ever happened.
They kept
17,000 altar calls, and here's the one guy. What do we do now? Anyway, so that's when I gave my life to the Lord. December 29th, 1985. I was 25 years old, which puts me, 9, 10, 11 months shy. No, 9 months shy, maybe, of 40 years as a believer. So
was Charlotte with you at that service?
She was. Yeah. She was I don't remember whether my in-laws were with me. They weren't my in-laws then, but and I was engaged at that. So Charlotte blew it. She accepted my proposal when I was unequally yoked. But the Lord fixed that problem.
Yeah, real quick.
And
before you got married.
Before we got married, and
what was it like when you gave your life to the Lord? Was it just radical, scales coming off your eyes, kind of, so to speak? You saw everything different. Was it?
No, there were a few because I had asked all these questions and gotten all the answers. So theologically, I already knew what I needed to know.
Needed to do,
the things that happened right away were my language cleaned up instantly, which was odd. My behavior choices in terms of things like drinking. Had I stopped smoking weed at that point? I think I had.
Like no desire anymore?
No, really no desire anymore.
Just like that.
And then I had a desire to. My hunger grew even more to learn.
Mm.
I mean, I was already fairly curious, but my hunger to learn was very high. My desire to be involved and do the right thing in a church family was very high. But the transformation of my heart was a very long process. And I think that's probably because, as a result of some of the stuff I've told you in the past, my heart was pretty damaged. And it's still a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm still learning. Like, I'm learning now that my relational style to people in situations of conflict, especially intimate situations, is that of an avoider. Okay, I will avoid conflict as my go-to strategy, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I had fairly distant parents who were aloof, and some of this structure, this British culture kind of a stuff, causes me to be quite an avoider. So there's lots of brokenness still in me in terms of my heart. Anyway, I don't know that I know where to go after that, so I'll throw it back at you.
So you're 25. You just got saved. Your desires to smoke and things have changed. Your language is cleaned up.
Yep.
You guys are engaged.
Uh-huh.
You're about to get married. You're gonna get married and live your life a little bit different.
Start a life together, and we're gonna do.
You got laid off from your job before or after you got married?
After.
Okay.
So we got married in '85. I was still working in the same town as my college, as Queen's University, and I was working for Urban Transportation Development Corporation. Yeah. Then the two of us, right after we got married, got shipped off to Thunder Bay, the icebox of Canada, and we started our lives together. We eventually moved to Windsor, Ontario, right across the river from Detroit. Okay. In kind of North American auto country. And I got plugged into the automotive industry right away. Rose pretty quickly.
In America or on the Canada?
In Canada for the first 11 years. Okay. Now, I had responsibility for plants in the U.S. and Mexico, but headquarters was in Canada. Then that company got bought by an American company, and the American company, called Textron, was, as all companies do, they look at what they just bought, not just for the physical assets, but for the human assets, and they say, who's talented, who knows what they're doing, we're going to redeploy them to some other role. Okay. And they did that with me, and so I moved to Detroit. Yeah. It's only a few miles away, but it was across an international border. They looked after my visa, my green card, all that sort of stuff. Okay. They hired lawyers to make that easy for me. And then I started to look after global labor relations for the automotive company, the automotive side of Textron. Textron also made, you'd appreciate this as a former Air Force guy, they made avionics suites for military and commercial aircraft companies. They made ballistic missile guidance systems. Really? Okay. Huey helicopters, Bell Helicopter is one of their companies. Okay. Citation Jets, although that's a commercial entity, but
Rockwell, or is that different? Remember we talked about? Okay.
Yeah, that's Rockwell is a different one. Actually, the avionics comment I just made a minute ago, I got my two companies mixed up. Okay. The avionics stuff is Rockwell. Okay. Textron is Bell Helicopter, Cessna Jets, guidance systems, things like that. Huh. So.
Okay, so you start working with labor laws. Moved to Detroit.
Negotiating contracts and arguing arbitration cases in front of arbitrators and things like that.
So your career is going up, basically.
Going very well.
Doing very well.
And so let me back up a little bit. We decided we were going to wait for 5 years before we started having children.
Okay.
We thought that would be a smart choice to make sure our relationship got solidified before we did that. We did that. And then we tried for 5 years and had real trouble. And, as so many cases, as soon as we got off the medication, we had kids like that. So I don't know what that's all about. But it's a common story I hear is people are on the fertility meds, and the second they get off it, they have kids. So, so
amazing how God works.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. Just let me do it my way.
Yeah,
I got you guys.
Yeah. So you had kids after about 10 years of marriage? 10
years of marriage. It was fairly late. First daughter, Victoria. Victoria Grace, named because we are victorious, but only by grace.
Beautiful name.
And she was the light of my life. Actually, the most emotional experience I've ever had in my life is watching my first child be born. The most emotional experience in my life would be anyway. It was just like virtually every emotion I could think of happened all at the same time. I was afraid. I was thrilled. I was in love. I was terrified. Just everything all at once in massive quantities. Now, mind you, it wasn't until my second child that I fainted in the OR, but I hung in there for Victoria. So so she was a lovely addition.
Yeah.
And
I have somewhat of a similar experience, but we'll share that for another time. Of my second as well.
Well,
everything you just described first, I remember everything about it. Every slow-mo, just miraculous.
Yeah.
Second was a little bit longer. I actually, you know what? I take that back. It was with the first, but just because it was so long. The labor was so long. I mean, at one point, Laura looked at the nurse and was like, "Can you please get my husband some water and some food?" And she's like in deep labor,
still having to deal with one baby.
Dealing with me over the side. But that's just that's another funny story.
That's great.
Another time, but. So anyway, you have Victoria Grace as your first child, a daughter.
Yep, and then we moved to the greater Detroit area, a town called Clarkston, Michigan. And while Charlotte was pregnant, and she had William, William James Winston Davis.
Okay.
William because we liked it. James for my grandfather, and Winston because of Charlotte's dad. But we liked all of those names. Very sort of regal British names.
I was going to say very British.
Yeah. And so he was born an American citizen. Victoria was born a Canadian citizen, and then both acquired the citizenship of the other countries shortly after that. So my career was going very well. It's interesting. In terms of big lessons learned in my career, I was a very good negotiator, and I could negotiate labor agreements like with the best of them. I had a 60-year-old mentor, good old boy from Missouri, who was, if you were to write a stereotypical part for a movie, about a good old boy that could negotiate, water out of the desert. It would be this guy. It would probably be played by Tommy Lee Jones, and he taught me a lot.
How'd you meet him?
He was my boss at Textron. He was the vice president of labor relations.
Okay.
I was the director, and so
you trained under him, learned everything you could.
Sort of trained me too well. So here's my dilemma that I've since forgiven myself for, but it was a challenge in my career. I left millions upon millions of dollars on the table at the bargaining table that I could have given to the unions, thereby the company, thereby the employees.
Yeah.
But I didn't, because I wanted to look good to my corporate masters. This is a story that's told over and over again in the corporate world.
Many guys can probably relate.
Oh yeah, there's just absolutely, and it's also told over and over again on the union side. It's just a different narrative.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you mine. So I for many years had this deep sense of regret that I'd left so much on the table, and that I could have made better settlements for the union. Ultimately, it's not for the unions, for the employees, but I was negotiating with the union, but I could have made better settlements and made the lives of people better. But I didn't, in order to feather my own cap. And I lived with a lot of guilt with that for a long time. Well, I still have guilt about it. I put it behind me. But do I wish I could have gone back and rewritten the script? Yeah, I do. Because I came in way under budget for virtually every negotiation I ever did.
You're good at it.
I was very good at it. And the problem is, as with anybody, you're an MMA fighter. If you're really good at it, you can hurt people. You can beat the crap out of people. That's not good.
Yeah.
God gave me a talent, and I misused it. So, for matter of fact, he's given me a lot of talents, and I've misused a lot of them. So, if I were to go back and do a lot of things again, I'd say, all right, it's clear that I'm good at this thing, whatever it is. Now, how am I going to use it appropriately?
Right.
And it's not just use it, how am I going to use it for the church? No, it's more than that. How am I going to use it appropriately? Like, you've got a gift of making people feel very comfortable when they're with you. Okay, how are you going to use that? Well, you're using it, and hopefully it's in an appropriate manner. And I had some gifts, and I did. It's not like I did everything wrong in my whole life. It's not the case, but I didn't frequently enough ask the question. Probably because I wasn't very introspective. I was driving so hard, so fast, that I didn't stop long enough to say, what am I doing here? Am I making good choices? Lord, is this what you want me to do? How does this line up with your word? Those kinds of questions. Yeah. I was just succeed.
Full steam ahead.
Yeah. And there were lots of prices. There's relationships with kids that paid the price with that. There was the fallout at the bargaining table that I talked about. Yeah. Lots of consequences that I regret. And that probably resonates with a lot of the guys that are listening. Am I making good choices? And then the other kind of question is, who is the author of what we define as good choices? Is that me? Is that the collective business world out there? I hope it's not, because they have a terrible sense of what good choices are. Right. Or is it the Lord? So anyway,
interesting stuff. So you're working, you're doing really well. Your career's accelerating, going up, on the up and up. You have 2 kids, marriage. You're balancing everything. See, like, to me, I'm envisioning your life kind of. And maybe a lot of guys in the 30s, like me right now, you're mid-30s, you're trying to balance being a dad, a husband, your career, everything like that. What was that like?
Well,
did it go well? Did things change?
That's a hard question, because if you were to ask my kids now, and I have been estranged from my kids for more than a decade. Okay. So it has been a brutal estrangement for me. The divorce from my ex-wife left scars on my kids that I hope someday will heal. But they've not spoken to me in almost a decade and a half now. But so if you were to ask them, how did that balance go? In retrospect, I suspect they would say it went very badly. Part of that, I'm trying to be as objective as I can. It's very hard. Part of that is probably very true. Was I the perfect dad? No. I inherited some of my father's stuff.
As we all do.
Sure, as we do. I was pretty performance focused. I was. I had a perfectionist tendency to me. I prefer to think of it as an orientation toward excellence, but it also probably bled over into perfectionism. I had very high standards for my kids, both behavioral standards and academic standards. And all of that blended together probably left a vacuum of softness and tenderness in my fathering that was noticeable by my kids. So that's where I would say the kids probably would say, how did I balance the whole professional, personal, family stuff? Not so great. I also look back at my dad and I do my very best to extend grace to him. Because like I inherited his junk, he inherited his old man's junk, or his old mom's junk. And we live in a broken world. Can't use it as an excuse. Because, it's like Mike Tomlin says, the standard is the standard. And there's the standard right there.
That's right.
So, but you also have to extend grace, because look at what Jesus did to all of those people he interacted with as he made his ministry in those 3 years. He extended grace all over the place. I mean, what a moving story of the woman at the well. You know, you've had 5 husbands, lady. I'm reading your mail, and yet she still knew that he loved her. And that he was here for her. He didn't explain it all right then and there. But so I try to extend grace to my dad. I'm hoping someday my kids will extend grace to me, and they'll look at me and they'll say, "Oh, he did a crappy job in a bunch of respects." But you know what? As broken and as messed up as he was, he tried his hardest. He built a very comfortable life, physically in terms of the resources that they were. He provided a great early education. Unfortunately, my marriage broke up when my kids were in their early teens. And so the foundation that I had set academically for my kids, that my ex-wife and I had set, of course, was really good. I mean, those kids are well educated and doing well in life. But some of the other stuff was missing. But I'm hoping they're going to extend some grace to me, and I've learned to extend a little bit of grace to myself. Now, if I had to do it over again, would I make some different choices? Yes, I would. But I also wouldn't go and be a greenskeeper at a country club so that I could be home every night at 5 o'clock, because that's not who God made me to be. Not to disparage greenskeepers. That's not the point. But God gave me a lot.
So we had a quick battery change. We left off where you went through a divorce, went through a pretty tough, challenging time in your life.
Yep.
And my question is, how did you how'd you get your life back? How'd you get back on track after many years of, like you said, you were homeless at one point, living out of your car?
I don't know that I did a whole lot.
Are you still working for the company?
No. I was doing all kinds of. I mean, I for one whole year I did absolutely nothing. Another year, I mean, I would drive a school bus. I would drive a handicapped paratransit vehicle. I worked as a guy that ran a 3/4 house for a men's rehab facility. I did a little bit of consulting work. I don't know, all kinds of stuff to keep myself alive on the one hand, which I didn't do a very good job of. But so if we're transitioning to, okay, so how did things start to turn around? I mean, all of this is in God's providence. I look back and I ask myself, why in the world, Lord, did you let me go through all of that stuff? And I probably would chalk it up to I am not a very good, I was going to say learner. I'm a great learner of some things. I'm not a very good learner of lessons from authority. And inasmuch as God is quite an authority, I tend to push him away more than I say, yeah, whatever you got for me, Lord, I'll make the changes. I'll make every single change you want me to make, and I'll make it right when you want me to make it, and I'll be fully submitted to you. And man alive, that's not how I'm wired. And it makes for a good worldly life. It doesn't necessarily make for a good spiritual life or a good relational life for those close to me. So anyway, from a plot line point of view, I'm out there in the dating world at this point, looking for love, so to speak. Yeah. And the Lord sends me my bride, Tony. And I've often referred to her as my rescuer. So we meet online, one of these dating apps, and she and I fall for each other, and she kind of pulled me out of the pit. And there's parts of that's been very hard for her because I'm not sure she signed up to be a rescuer. But she saw something in me that was special to her. Yeah. And that was kind of me getting sort of pulled up out of the pit, partly by Tony with the Lord's help. But this is an ongoing process. I'm still damaged, and I'm not the greatest husband in the world, and I would like to be better. And it's funny, we talk about, I got technically 10 years left according to the statistical average, but gosh, I'm taking a long time to get it right. But this is the beginning of eternity. This is not the end. And so it's pretty clear in most of Scripture that that this is a journey toward holiness, not a journey toward perfection when we're done, but it's a journey toward holiness. Right. There's a guy that wrote a great, I've forgotten the author's name, but the book is called Sacred Marriage. Okay. Great book for any married guy who has a relationship with the Lord. And his fundamental premise is, he asks the question, what if marriage was an institution or a sacrament that was not designed to make you happy, but it was designed to make you holy? And when I read that for the first time, my head went spinning around. I thought, wow, that's brilliant, but I don't like it. Yeah. Because I don't want to get, I don't want, part of the sinful man, I don't want to be made holy. I just want to be left alone to do my thing. Flesh. Yeah. The other thing is, it makes marriage the hardest relationship, institution, it's the hardest thing I've ever done is marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's why, this is interesting. I wonder if that's why when I love to go out in the woods and do stuff,
Yeah.
I go over the top. I'll put myself in mortal danger in order to get my adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Because it's easier than marriage. I'll nearly kill myself out in the woods.
Because it's a challenge.
I took 1,000-mile solo paddle down the Ohio River from Pittsburgh, from the point in Pittsburgh to the Mississippi River.
Really?
Took me 3.5 months, cost me 2 new shoulders.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 4 million paddle strokes.
3.5 months.
3.5 months of solo paddle. Well, with my dog. I had my dog with me. So, I mean, I'd do nutty stuff like that.
Wow.
But marriage is really, really, it may be easier for some guys.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard.
Yeah.
And it's humbling, and I don't do it well.
Mm-hmm.
And my poor wife has to put up with how poorly I do it. She doesn't do it perfectly either, but that's hers to deal with. Yeah. And, she's got her own challenges, part of which are me, part of which are her.
Mm-hmm. But was she previously married as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So you kind of have that together
and we've got
common.
Right. We bring some of our own baggage and mistakes and into that. Mm-hmm. She's got a beautiful daughter that is now my daughter, and that's why I'm blessed with also her husband, Richie. Jacqueline is the daughter. Richie is her husband, and our little grandson Elijah, who is just the most epically awesome kid. Yeah. Being able to see children from as hard as I am, I'm way softer than I used to be. Yeah. To see the little guy through a different lens. Mm-hmm. I'm no longer responsible for every single thing that happens to the kid. It's nice. He's so cool, and he's, how old is he? He's 6. Mm-hmm. He's totally unlike me. Mm-hmm. Well, he's smart. He's curious, but he's incredibly quiet. He's incredibly tender and kind. So in those two respects, I'm brash and bull in a china shop, and I ask for forgiveness, not permission, for about everything in life, and he's not that way. Yeah. So it's nice to see him, and he teaches me things about kindness and gentleness that I would never learn from an adult because I'm too stuck in my ways and self-important and all that sort of stuff. And you can't help it. This little man is just the coolest thing in the world. Yeah. And he teaches me a lot of stuff.
So when you met Tony and you say she kind of rescued you and you got back in your faith and you guys got married. Yep. What was that whole process like? Did you get back involved with the church?
Well, you know what? Let me back up. Tony wasn't the only agent of rescue. The Body of Christ was an agent of rescue. Yeah. In a significant way. And now I feel badly for not mentioning that side of the story. But while I was married, I came across a guy who was a manager of a Starbucks in Franklin Park, PA, next door to Wexford. Right. Intersection of Wexford Bain Road and I-79. The famous T-Bones Plaza. Anyway, guy's name was James Hogan, and he was a Starbucks manager, and that was my go-to Starbucks every morning, kind of when I went to work, and so I would go there all the time. And he was a very interesting, different guy. He insisted that every single one of his staff members, he was the manager, every single one of his staff members knew every customer by name. Everyone. Wow. And he got it more than most other Starbucks managers, especially in the woke way that Starbucks has become. Yeah. But he got it that Starbucks is got nothing to do with coffee. It's got everything to do with relationship.
How you feel.
And experience. Yeah.
Smart.
And so anyway, I got to know him a little bit. Lo and behold, he's a pastor. Lo and behold, he's planting a church in a little place called McKees Rocks. I didn't think too much of it. Time went along. Marriage blows up. he hears that I'm in a very bad situation, and he calls me up, and he says, "Ian, I hear you're, just about to move into this abandoned building right next to just about the nastiest hood in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You and your shiny black BMW race car. Ian, this is an epically stupid choice you're about to make.
Yeah.
How about you come? Our church has just been blessed with a new building that's a pretty rundown residential building, kind of like a parsonage, right next to the church. It needs a lot of work. How about you come? You help work on the house, and we'll give you a place to live, and you can live up in the attic and make that your temporary home. And you can come and worship with us and do that."
Yeah.
And I did. I was there for 6 years.
Wow.
I became part of the worship team. I played the keyboards. My faith was reignited, and I started. And these people in McKees Rocks are not my people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to create a socioeconomic map of the world, I'm over here, and these folks are over here, and I make no judgment about either one. We're just not the same.
Yeah. Different backgrounds.
From completely different places.
Yep.
And so that was good for me too, because the Lord opened my eyes and says, look, here's folks that are just not like you, and I love them every bit as I love you, and they're broken, and they're making bad choice after bad choice. Well, you made bad choice after bad choice.
Right.
I love all you guys. And that was good for me. I just wanted to rewind the clock a little bit there. So you were talking about Tony,
right,
and her being the rescuer, and I described her as the rescuer, and hugely she was. But also James Hogan, all my people at Faithbridge Community Church in Stowe Rocks, were a big part of my rescuing story.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so Tony got me out of being single. That's interesting. That's a whole other conversation we probably don't have time for. But a normal, healthy man who is single is a dangerous animal. We have a tendency to make really stupid choices as single men. And there's something civilizing about the influence of a woman in our lives that we would be, not every one of us, but most of us would be train wrecks if we didn't have a good woman that is sort of, I don't know, looking over our shoulder, and she's saying, are you really going to make that stupid choice?
Yeah.
And we hear that in our mind before we actually make the epically stupid choice. We still make a bunch of them, don't get me wrong.
Yep, been there.
But there's something civilizing about that, and Tony has been that for me, and I've still made dumb choices, but nonetheless, she's been a very civilizing agent for me. And this whole concept of becoming holy instead of becoming happy has been a journey for us. Is the Lord is sanctifying us through our marriage. And because we are and I should speak for myself, not for Tony, because I am as rebellious as I am, it's still a work that is not pleasant. I don't know if you feel that way. I don't know if you feel like when Lara is pressing in on you and leaving you with the impression that says, hey, Matt, you screwed up big time. Whether you immediately say, wow, I'm so glad I have a woman that helps me see these things. Or whether it takes you a period of time to get beat up a couple of times, or for her wisdom to sink in. Or for you to realize, you know what? It's rare, but on this occasion, Lara's wrong. I'm sticking to my guns this time. Yeah, that happens too.
Yeah. So. I've been there a time or two, for sure. Especially early on in our marriage, it's we would butt heads a lot, but I've learned over the years, I was listening to something recently talking about, in Genesis when, God created man, he said, well, it's not good for man to be alone. I need to make him a helper, right?
Yeah.
And how when the Holy Spirit came, he said, wait here because the Holy Spirit will be your helper, your comforter.
Yeah.
And just how the two are very similar, how you can use that example in marriage and husbands needing wives.
Yeah, we've done a pretty bad job of characterizing the biblical role of a wife. We've said it's a subordinate role. I don't know that it's a subordinate role. It is there is clearly one in authority,
right?
Just as in the relationship of the triune God, there's one in authority, and it's the Father. But that is a good example of how helper can be such a beautiful thing.
Yep. We're both created equal. God loves us equally.
Absolutely.
But we are to lead, and just last week I was about to make a very dumb decision here with the tree branch that fell on the power lines. I was going to go and just start, cleaning it up, and
stupid is as stupid does, Matt.
Yeah. Thank God I have a wife up there that said, Matt, don't do it. Don't go near that. A guy just literally got electrocuted 2 days ago from touching a tree branch.
How long did it take you to wake up to that after she said that? Did you still want to go and do it, or did you clue in right away?
I think it was honestly about the second or third time she told me, because the storm came. I wanted to then. She said no. I thought about it, and at that point it was it was night. I was like, I'll get to it the next day. The next day came around. I was about to go take care of it, and she called. So maybe it was the second, because she called specifically and was like, hey, I just heard about a man who was electrocuted 2 days ago for doing something that you're just about to go do. She's like, I'm telling you, don't go do it. And I felt it, and I was like, okay, Lord, I will hear this, and I will acknowledge it, and I will hold. And it's just
all right. So old man to young man. Let me ask you this question now.
Yeah.
Have you thanked your wife for that?
Absolutely, I
Good
have.
for you.
Because that night, after she told me the story of the man getting electrocuted, I said, Laura, thank you for telling me that, because I was, just
good
like you said, I was about to just I'm gonna go.
You went brain dead there for a while.
I love to get things done. I love to work hard. I need to, if I'm gonna do it, I got to do it now. Patience. So I'm just something I'm learning. So
it's. I enjoy the process of being together with guys where you chew around these very specific stories, and you can be honest with each other. Like, you were about to do something spectacularly stupid.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, it may not have had any bad consequences, but nonetheless, on the surface, it was spectacularly stupid.
Yeah.
And here's your sweet wife, who is in her own style. Some wives have very different styles than others.
Yeah.
In her own style, is saying, no, don't do it. And these are great learning experiences as husbands, and how you followed up was, in my book, great. Is I
haven't always followed up that way, but and learned the hard way. But
me too. Me too. It's interesting how we relate to our wives. And they really are a helper, and we don't get it the ways that they're a helper. I don't get it, that all of the different ways that they're a helper. My wife, Tony, one of her most precious gifts to me is her patience. I can be stupid for a long period of time, and she'll outlast me. And that is what a gift that is.
What a fruit of the Spirit.
And what it's got to be why the Lord put us together is that because we complement each other really well, we're completely opposite. And
they usually attract.
All of the gifts that she's got, I desperately need, and the stuff that she is a follower. I am a leader. We're both wired that way. And the places where things go well is where I lead well, and the family prospers.
Right.
The places where things go poorly is where I abdicate my responsibility for leadership, and she has a tendency to feel like she has to fill in, and she doesn't like it.
Yeah.
She wasn't made for it, and she would much rather me take the lead, obviously in a godly way,
right.
but me take the lead. And boy, at 64 years old, I'm still trying to figure out what's the right formula for leading, making good leadership choices in a marriage on a day-by-day basis. And I don't know, the trite Christian answer is, oh, look at Scripture, it's got all the answers. Oh, come on, now that's not that easy.
Yeah.
You got emotions involved, you got the specifics of the very situation. Scripture doesn't speak to the situation of, okay, when Zacchaeus had the down power line on the tree,
right.
and
what did he do?
and Zacchaeus' wife tell him 3 times, don't do it, Zacchaeus, that's really stupid. Okay, now I know what to do.
Yeah.
Not that easy. You got to figure it out on your own and work it through. And it's all of that conflict between husband and wife. It's a beautiful, painful thing.
Yep. So after you guys have been married for a little while now.
Been married for 6 years.
6 years.
As a matter of fact, we're about to celebrate our 7th anniversary of the day we met.
That's awesome.
I believe it's May 5th coming up.
Nice.
No, June 5th, rather.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say that right past. Okay. That's awesome. So you guys got married and your faith got reignited, which is amazing. And then I was going to ask you about your Intrepid Firearms.
Oh, sure.
That's why I'm looking at your mug.
Yep.
So then where was that born out of? Because I wanted to get to where you are now.
Sure. Well,
where you're going, where you're headed.
So when I was in the latter stages of my corporate life here in Pittsburgh, I was the Chief Human Resources Officer and Vice President of Human Resources for the largest lime company in the world, headquartered, their North American operations headquartered here in Pittsburgh.
Which was?
Carmeuse, North America, Carmeuse Lime.
Okay.
And my director of organization development and learning was a Vietnam vet, quite a bit older than me, and he introduced me now I backtrack, as a Canadian, we're imbued culturally with a distaste for handguns. Okay, long guns are okay if you only use them for hunting, but use of any gun for personal protection, especially a handgun. Okay, bad news. It's weird, but it's a cultural thing. We have our Second Amendment here in the States, and our whole existence is predicated on overthrowing a tyrannical government. So it's a whole different historical backbone.
Yeah.
So anyway, guy says, "Hey, we need to get you out. You Canuck. We got to get you out and get you shooting with a handgun." I said, "Okay, well, what should I get if I'm going to get a handgun?" And he said, "Well, need a Browning high power, which is this one was chambered in .40 Smith & Wesson.
Okay,
it's a 1911 style gun, classic. I think it's what he shot probably in Vietnam. And I shot my first handgun for the very first time and totally got the bug. I mean, I was hooked. Right, hook, line, and sinker right out of the gate. So I started to shoot more and more, and then I thought, I should probably, if I'm going to do this and do it well, I should probably take a couple of classes. So I took a couple of classes, a couple of NRA classes, and then I got. This is the way I do things. I go whole hog.
Yeah. All in.
So I started to take a rifle class. I took an AR class. I took a shotgun class. Then I thought, these guys that are teaching me, they know these guns, but most of them aren't very good educators, and I got a whole career of being an educator in the corporate world. That's part of my role as an HR guy, is the whole training and development function, executive leadership function,
right?
Leadership development, all that stuff. I'm a pretty good educator and a pretty good communicator. So why don't I do this? So I thought, okay, I'm going to start getting certified. So I went through the whole NRA curriculum and got certified in basic pistol, basic rifle, basic shotgun, personal protection inside the home, as an instructor. Then I came across the United States Concealed Carry Association, which really takes it a step up in terms of the quality of the instruction from the NRA. The NRA over the years has become principally an advocacy organization. It used to be a training organization that morphed into an advocacy organization. So I found the USCCA, and I started that whole same process with the USCCA. Became an instructor and started to teach lots of people. And in the course of that, I don't know, 10-ish years ago, I created Intrepid Firearms Academy. It actually, back then when I first created it, was Davis and Company Firearms and Personal Defense Training or something like that. And then I became a training counselor with the USCCA, which is the guy who certifies other instructors. So it's kind of one step up the ladder. And so now I do both. I teach end users through Intrepid Firearms Academy, all sorts of shooting. Most of it is defensive, and most of it is pistol, because that's what the demand is out there. But there's also defensive AR work. But I also teach emergency medicine. I've really become a kind of a full service. I have other instructors that work for me. I teach emergency medicine, countering the mass shooter threat, do consultation with churches, houses of worship, schools on countering the mass shooter threat, children's firearm safety, emergency medicine, as I said. So lots of offerings, all centered around the idea that we are called to be the first responder of our own family. I think we've given the name first responder badly to the quote unquote first. There's the second responders. I mean, and bless them, it doesn't diminish their role in the least. But we're the first responders. They're the second responders, and by the time they get here, we probably should have dealt with the problem. It doesn't matter what the problem is. Like, let's say it's a fire. Why do you suppose we have smoke detectors in our homes? And that's because we need to be ready when the problem happens. Well, it's the same reason we ought to have a firearm or some other tool of self-defense. It doesn't have to be a firearm. And know how to use it is the same reason we have smoke detectors and fire extinguishers and all the rest of it.
To be ready.
To be ready. Because
vigilant.
We don't know when the threat's coming. We don't know when the fire's going to go off. So teach all of that stuff and really enjoy doing it.
Interesting.
Doesn't keep me busy 100% of the time. That has a lot probably to do with, honestly, I have not licked the problem of marketing. It is hard.
Takes a lot, costs a lot of money, time.
And figuring out this whole Facebook ad thing and the Google ads and YouTube and I'm a lot more savvy than most old geezers, but it's not easy to figure it out. So anyway, it's not quite full time. And now I'm entertaining another new opportunity that I'm really looking forward to that I can't fully disclose yet, but there is a new private school opening up in the greater Pittsburgh area. And
Christian based,
yep. And I am hoping to build a relationship with them somehow so that I can pour into these little maniacs as my sort of, farewell act here and make a real contribution to young people, because as I see how education's going, and I was blessed with a great education, as I see how education is going in our country, it's not going well. We spend more time teaching kids things not only that aren't relevant, they're detrimentally damaging to the spirit of young people. And we see it now with all of the confusion, whether it's gender confusion or anxiety. Did you know that of all of the mass shootings that have happened at the hands of young people, 100% of them since we started calculating them, every single one of them have been on some sort of antidepressant mental health drugs.
No.
Every single one of them, without exception.
Interesting.
I mean, if that isn't...
What's that tell you?
Yeah. Well, and every single one of those drugs has as a side effect, oh, by the way, may cause you to be suicidal or homicidal.
Jeez.
And we're not cluing in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but the main argument's always gun.
It's always the gun,
and not
and it
not dealing with the other part of the problem.
Right, and the gun is merely a tool.
Right. Exactly.
That's like if someone were to listen to this podcast and come to a conclusion that that Jesus is the way to go. So he's the right choice. Let's give credit to the camera.
Yeah.
Or let's give credit to the lights.
Yeah.
Or the microphone.
That's a good point.
What's the guy? Come on.
That's right.
Yeah. These are tools. That's all they are.
Yep. Tools to use. I think it was very interesting what you said about, farewell act whenever you were talking about the school.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what I want to close with. Like, it sounds like you're going to pursue an opportunity, which is amazing, to give back to kids in a school. But I want to just encourage that this is also going to be, I hate to say farewell act because it sounds like you're dying. You know what I mean?
I am. So are you.
True.
What are we going to do with the rest of our time? True. That's the question.
But the purpose of what I kind of goes back to the heart of what I kind of want to do here is because it's like I see men all around me in this life, such as yourself, strong Christian men who've been through tons of things through their life. Their life was unscripted.
Very unscripted.
They didn't plan to do for things to happen. You didn't plan probably for a divorce to happen or things like that. Nope. The Proverbs 19 says, "Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails." Right? We have all these plans, and so I want to highlight guys like you and their story, their testimony, to share, to help encourage other men like me, 30s, 40s, 20-year-olds, fathers, husbands. And so whenever you said farewell, it's just, believe it or not, you're doing that here.
Cool. That's encouraging.
Because I believe that what your story, your testimony is going to impact a lot of people that listen to this of just how to navigate through business life, home life, balancing act.
So I appreciate that, and that's encouraging. The one thing, that's not a good way to put it because there's more than just one thing, but one of the things that I would encourage guys to do to stay grounded, stay out of trouble, stay out of the stupid guy zone.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
that's our happy place, right?
Yeah.
Is to surround yourself with other godly men and build close, intimate relationships where they can say to each other, in whatever form works for them, let's pick some examples from our conversation. So, Matt, I'm proud of you that you said to Laura, thank you, because you validated who she was, that she has a voice in your life, that she is your equal. You recognize that she loves you. And I'm proud of you that you said that. Okay, so that interaction doesn't happen without an intimate relationship. And intimate relationships with guys are way too far and few between. Few and far between.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Because we try to...
There's a lot of reasons. There's a principle in logic called reductionism. We tend to reduce everything to excessively simple terms. So I don't want to be too reductionist about this, but there's a few reasons. One is we're too busy.
Pride. Sorry, I quit inserting answers. I asked the question.
You're fine. I'm thinking about it.
I asked the question, but I'm also trying to answer.
Part of a healthy male relationship is me not just accepting what you say, me listening to what you say and saying, wait a minute, is Matt right? I'm not sure. Yeah. So, and here's what I was thinking about. Pride is not nearly as much, in my experience, an element in a male-to-male relationship. Because I have a looser tongue than the average person, so forgive me. But if you say something in this male-to-male relationship I'm gonna call bullshit on you in a heartbeat. Okay, so the pride is not as much of an issue between guys. Alone, yes. With my wife, yes. But within guys, pride is not. And so we were talking specifically about close male to male relationships.
Yeah.
I don't think. Why is it that it's hard to do that? Time. There is an unhealthy spirit of we've perverted the American independent spirit to be independent from any other input in your life in every respect, and that's not good. Independence, the American independent spirit, has to do with independent from a tyrannical government. That's what it means.
Right.
But if you look at the founders and our founding culture, it was a devoutly Christian. The body of Christ was the central unit of American culture. So there's not, I don't know about pride, but so why don't we do it? It's a good question. It's worth examining. Why don't we have close male relationships? There aren't very many guys that are willing to go there.
Yeah.
It's scary. You need a few guys that are going to push until you get past the discomfort, and you get to talk about stuff that's just insanely difficult. You get to talk about your porn problem and the time you hit your wife and you feel crappy about it, but you've never really dealt with it. Or the times you're still hitting your wife, or whatever the case may be. I mean, and where guys can be, okay, we're in the studio and we're going to turn the cameras off and we're going to get real, and I'm going to talk to you about your problem with beating on your kids, okay? And we're not getting out of here until that gets dealt with. You know, that's hard stuff. Yeah. I'm not suggesting you're doing any of that stuff, of course, but
no, I see what you mean. Just they don't want to deal with it. It's an issue maybe in their life, and they just don't want to deal with it, overcome it, and they, you know, until they either get caught, until they either come to the end of themselves and surrender. It's gonna be there. So
and even when they get caught, the problem is not that what they did is hurting other people. The problem is they got caught. That's the problem. Well, that's not enough. So interesting. And then the other thing is that guys aren't very good at extending grace. One of the things I learned I won't say very well, because I don't know that I've learned anything very well, but one of the things that I've learned better than some other things is I learned it in my time as at Light of Life Rescue Mission, where the cornerstone of their culture is a Christ-centered 12-step program. So one of the things that is really healthy about that culture is that guys get together and they don't excuse each other for their behavior, but you can put your baggage there on the ground and say, this is what I did. And you're still loved. You're still accepted. Your behavior's not accepted. But the guys around the room aren't the judges. They're just there to be with you. And that's a healthy male environment that I wish it didn't take alcoholism or drug addiction or porn addiction or whatever to get you into a room full of guys that can be honest and forgiving with you, like they are in that culture. But, so
sometimes it takes that point.
It does.
So
it does.
Well, thank you for the interview.
Absolutely.
Like I said before, your farewell, I think, is going to really impact a lot of people that listen to this story. And I'm sure I feel like there's still a lot that we could probably talk about, but maybe another time.
That'd be great. We could go down little rabbit holes, and whatever's helpful to you. I'm glad you're doing this ministry. This is great.
Appreciate it.
And I would encourage any of your listeners who feel like they're alone in their struggles, go find a couple of guys. They're going to be knuckleheads just like they are. Go find a couple of guys, 3 guys. I have a meeting once a week in my wood shop. We didn't talk about my woodworking passion. I have a meeting in my wood shop, and we just gather our junky old chairs around the wood shop. There's sawdust everywhere, tools everywhere, and it's a bunch of guys that once a week, 6 o'clock in the morning, gather together, and we just kind of do life.
Wow.
And it's not easy to find the time, and not everybody's there every week, but somebody's there every week.
Yeah.
So my encouragement to your audience is, if you find yourself alone, go find another godly guy.
Yeah.
2, 3 of them, and put together your woodshop.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing. You're the second guy that I've taught. Well, I'm sure there's plenty of other guys, but you're the second guy that I've talked to recently that has something like that. The other guy, he did this many, many years ago. It was literally his garage. He met in his garage. He loved hunting.
That's where my woodshop is, in my garage.
Okay, so for him, he loved hunting. That's like his thing.
Yeah.
So he literally started with just a few, and before long, he had tons of other hunters in the area that would do the exact same thing. They would meet in his garage in the morning,
That's awesome.
have coffee,
Yep.
and literally just, whether they did a little devotional, pray, talk.
Yeah.
And it's he talks about it all the time and how helpful it was. So
absolutely,
that's really cool.
And it doesn't need to be. It could be nothing wrong with this. It doesn't need to be a hyper spiritual activity. Like, one of the things we talk about in our group is the relationship challenges of being married men.
Yep.
And there's buckets of them.
Oh yeah.
And so how do I navigate these waters? And we've got some guys that are very different personalities than others, and they bring their own flavor into the conversation. And there's one guy in my group that he beats me over the head all the time about whether or not I am, how would he describe it best? He would say, whether I am dying to myself in a real and tangible and meaningful way every day in relationship to my wife. And I do not like to hear that.
Yeah.
I do not like to hear that. He does not give up. He will not let me go.
But it's good to have in your life.
It's so good.
Makes you better. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
The Bible says.
But the challenge is in that relationship, what am I going to do with the fact that he won't give up? Am I going to throw him out of my life because he ticks me off? And that's where the grace comes in. I need to give him the freedom to be who he is, deliver whatever message he's got, either from the Lord or from himself, and it's mine to do with as I see fit. But I love him as a brother more than I don't love what he has to say. So find those guys and let them be part of your life. And
if they're in Moon Township, you don't have to give your exact address, but if they're in Moon and they listen to this, they can reach out to you.
Absolutely.
Is there any way people can contact you?
Yeah, email R. Ian Davis, first initial R, middle name Ian Davis, at intrepidfirearmsacademy.com.
Okay.
You want to learn to shoot? You got probably 70% of the people I teach are women. I say Intrepid, or my instructors teach are women. And I do anything from introduction, very first shot, up to fairly hardcore tactical stuff. Not Navy SEAL level stuff. Love to do that for anybody. If somebody wants to just need somebody to talk to, say, Ian, I'm going through what you went through. I'm in the darkness. I am making stupid choices left, right, and center. I don't know where to go, man. Call me up or send me an email. Happy to lock arms with you and walk down the path.
That's amazing. I'll put the email in the description below this email.
Yep. So. And I'll give you maybe a link to Intrepid's website.
Yeah.
Put down there.
The website as well.
And
Yep.
We'll look forward to maybe if there's another opportunity, we'll get an update in 6 months or a year and get back together again.
Yep.
You can still serve me free coffee?
I think I can. I think I can do that for you.
Thanks, man.